Word Balloon is brought to you by the League of Word Balloon Listeners. Hi, everybody. Welcome back. It's Word Balloon, the Comic Book Conversation Show. John Sutras here, and we've got a great lineup of incredibly talented people. The men behind Noir City and one of their contributors for their current issue. But let me go through the roster here. Next to me, at least on my screen, I've got Mike Kronenberg right there. Mike, what is your title at Noir City?
Art director, designer.
I was going to say art director. All right, very good. We've got Mike's brother, Steve. Steve, your title at Noir City?
Managing editor and writer.
Excellent. Now I'm going to jump to the fine Batman writer who has an excellent column in the current issue of Noir City, my buddy Tom King. Good to see you, Tom.
I am here just because if Michael asks me to show up, I show up, and just to save myself some time from listening to this tomorrow. So thank you guys for having me.
There you go. Absolutely. And finally, the founder of Noir City and the man behind the Noir City festivals and the Noir City Foundation, although I'm sure I'm saying the name wrong for the foundation, TCM's own Eddie Muller. It's great to have you, Eddie. Welcome.
Good to be here, John. Great to see all you guys. Tom, it's been a long time. Good to see you, buddy.
It's been a long time for you, but I see you every Sunday night when I watch your show. And then, of course, this week I've been seeing you every single day as I watch this marathon. So this is
very good. Very good.
By the way, just with the marathon, with the festival, Eddie, when I was talking to Doral about this, I said, I noticed how for the opening Friday and Saturday, you were wearing a suit. And then you switched to the casual look for Sunday. And after that, just like you do with the festival, just like what you do in San Francisco. So I was very impressed with that detail. And I just want to let you know I noticed that.
Thank you. The introduction in the suit and tie was the last thing I recorded. I was totally exhausted. And it was like, seriously, I'm going to put a suit and tie on and go upstairs and record this? And that was a rough week, but we got it all done, and it's going very, very well. I'm very pleased. You may have noticed, Tom, you may have noticed this since you said you watch Noir Alley every week. It was a really with the online festival, the Noir City International Festival. For people who don't know, hey, good job. There you go, John. That is taking place right now online as a replacement for our usual Noir City Festival that happens in Silver Spring, Maryland, just about this time every year. And that's actually where I met Tom. He came to the festival there. Was that last year or the year before? That was
actually the first one was 2 years ago. It's when I invited him. I invited him online to go because I thought he might like it because I thought his work was very noir-like. Yeah. And I thought, well, let me invite this guy. I'm a big fan of his work. And so, 2 years ago.
Yeah, that was cool. Very gratifying to hear that you use noir in your own work. I was very thrilled to hear that. You use the films as, a jumping off point for some of the stuff that you do. Anyway, what I was going to say was, the intros I do for the online festival are much more like the intros I do for the festivals when they're live, and they're different than the stuff I do on TCM, which is legal department and everything has to be fact checked. So I have to write scripts well in advance of shooting them, for TCM. But these things I can just say whatever the hell I wanted to say. So that was good.
That's awesome. Do you remember what movies you saw, Tom?
What movies
at the festival that time?
At the festival back then? Yeah, I saw Wicked Woman. I saw I saw the 3D double feature.
Yeah, Inferno. We saw Inferno.
Yeah.
Inferno and the other crazy, the one that's on the roller coaster.
Roller coaster one,
with
right?
the amnesia roller coaster movie.
Man in the Dark.
Man in the Dark.
Outstanding. That's great, man.
There's a very generic noir title for you.
That is my great problem with noir is their titles are so just you can shift one to the other. They don't stick in my head. I'm not smart enough for this.
It's like a slide puzzle where you can just move the words around in the slide puzzle and make new noir titles, right?
Yeah,
big man on a dark street.
What's more generic than Wicked Woman? It's not as generic as noir gets.
That's a good point.
Okay,
Absolutely.
you guys have to vamp for a couple of seconds because I realize my laptop is not plugged in, so I'm going to run out of juice.
Yeah.
So I'm going to just scoot around here. I'll be right back.
All right, we'll take you out for a second. No problem, man. We're watching it backstage. All good. Guys, honestly, both Steve and Mike, and I'm sure Eddie can tell from our conversation tonight. Massive noir fan myself, and I've got a list of recent watches that I've done of some noir films that I want to discuss, and also eventually we'll get into some noirs that were adapted for the comics, which I just love how in tune, and it shouldn't surprise me, especially a publisher like EC and some of the others that were so in tune with the films and everything and adapting so many films to comic form of the day. I think that's great.
Well, we could also talk about that top 10 list that Eddie put together in Noir City.
I've got it handy.
Almost 6 years ago, I guess we did that.
I've got it handy, and of course, Tom too. Nice feature in the current issue. I'm going to bring up the cover.
Yeah,
there it is.
We did the top 10 list, and we did the feature on EC.
Oh, absolutely.
The Picto Fiction. We did a story about Picto Fiction. I've got don't remind me, John, and I'll pull out my Picto Fiction
comics
boards to show.
Yes. He was showing me the other day, Tom. He's got EC original Picto Fiction pages, which is pretty amazing. Yeah.
Oh no! He saw. He showed.
He showed it.
I texted the pictures.
I've organized a whole heist movie to break into Michael's house. It's gonna be tough. He's got some dogs, so we have some plans. But I'm gonna eventually get there.
Mike, I'm gonna single you out.
You have primo stuff yourself. You've shown me the EC original art.
Oh my god, guys! I had a tear.
And Steve has stuff too. Steve has great original art too.
That's cool. I'm going to single Michael out for a second because I want to see what that movie poster is behind him. Here we go.
That is an Italian.
Eastwood. Is that a Dirty Harry poster?
From Dirty Harry, the Don Siegel directed Dirty Harry first.
Outstanding. One. Very cool. Eddie, what was it with the Italian movie poster artists? Because my God, I love going through vintage movie posters and lobby cards, and obviously so many times the foreign films always blow us away in terms of sometimes the photo lobby cards and posters we got here in America. But do you ever really explore those great foreign artists that did those beautiful paintings?
Oh yeah, Luigi Martinotti and Anselmo Ballester and Capitani and these guys, fantastic. There's no question that in Europe, the love of cinema and you guys know comics are the same way. They're treated much more with much more reverence in Europe than they are in the United States. And the same is true of movie posters. They actually, what's interesting is they never.
Eddie's book.
Michael Kronenberg, my agent, very nice job there.
Oh look, I'm up too. I'm there.
Oh, and Tom's got it as well. Very nice.
Very nice, guys. Very good. You maybe can see I have an Italian poster on the wall behind me back here for that's a particular favorite of mine, a movie called Tomorrow is Another Day, but that's the Italian Locandina poster for it. The Italians are interesting because they do just gorgeous. What I was going to say was in Europe, poster artists get to sign their work. And you never see that in the United States. Unless you're Norman Rockwell and you happen to do a movie poster, you don't get to sign it. But in Europe, you know, it took so long for people to figure out who these artists were in the United States. You know, at RKO, there was an artist named William Rose who did a lot of their fantastic posters, like the Out of the Past poster and other things. But he never signed a poster. We just figured out who he was and did the research and everything. But in Europe, you know, Ralph Goetz is the great German poster artist, and Belinsky and Boris Grinson in France is one of their great poster artists. So it's interesting that, you know, America doesn't value this stuff the way the Europeans do.
Fair enough. I'm trying to bring up. I've got a great. Someone did a great birthday tribute to me, and I was mentioning Out of the Past, where he put my face on Mitchum's, which I'm sure is blasphemy.
That's a significant burden to carry there, John. You got a lot to live up to there.
No question, man. And you know, Eddie, a few weeks ago, I was loving that Mitchum Robert Ryan film you showed on Noir Alley.
Oh, The Racket.
Yes, The Racket. Oh my God. And Elizabeth Scott, who I've carried a torch for since I was a little kid and I first saw. Wasn't she in Scared Stiff with Martin and Lewis?
Yes.
That's the first time I saw Elizabeth Scott. And
that's the movie that has the fantastic cast and is just so mediocre.
Are you talking about The Racket or
The Racket? Yeah.
Both of those things are true. Both of those things.
Yeah.
Got a great cast, but it's very mediocre.
Hey, John, have you ever seen Too Late for Tears?
I don't believe so.
Oh, you would have remembered.
Oh my God,
it's so good.
I'm gonna have to. Yeah, that's what I'm gonna have to watch. I finally saw. Shame on me. It took me forever. Dead Reckoning with Bogart and Elizabeth Scott. Love that.
But if you're a Liz Scott fan, Too Late for Tears is the one. That's kind of her signature
that's the
role.
movie.
I mean, she's really, really bad in that film. I don't mean bad acting wise. I mean,
evil.
She's evil in that movie.
She's the wicked woman.
Well, she's the housewife from hell.
The house, yeah.
In
Who else is
Too
in
Late for Tears.
And else is in the cast?
Dan Duryea, Arthur Kennedy, and Don DeFore. And Christine Miller, who's
she kills Dan Duryea in the ultimate revenge for hitting all those women all those years.
What a spoiler! What a spoiler, Tom!
Oh, Tom!
80 years.
Come on. By the way, the Film Noir Foundation is the one who restored Eddie, and the Film Noir Foundation restored Too Late for Tears.
Oh, that's fantastic, man! That's amazing, and that's another great thing. And I don't know if this was the case with Too Late for Tears, but I love too that. Literally, globally, these movies are being unearthed, and it's like, oh yeah, we got one in Guatemala, and I know it's from 1936, but it's been sitting in a vault, in Guatemala all this time, or at the back of a theater. God only knows. Maybe still running.
The first.
I don't think we're going to find too many things in Guatemala, to be honest with you. But bad climate for film preservation in Guatemala. But,
fair enough.
You're absolutely right, John. I mean, it's like they're finding things in projectionists' garages in New Zealand, and we've restored stuff from Argentina that was literally in the deceased producer's estate in his wine cellar. We're finding cans of film and stuff that are completely improperly preserved, but thankfully we are able to get to it in time. It's like building a network of people around the world who care about this stuff and have the wherewithal to persuade people to let them in. It's no different than you know, to speak to your audience, it's like you hear about a cache of comic books. Somebody had a huge comic book collection, and it's like, we got to get in there and rescue the comic book collection. You know, same thing with films. You know, the difference is private collectors aren't really supposed to have the films.
Sure.
It is by its nature illegal to actually possess the films. So if you're getting them from a source that isn't involved in the production of the movie, there's something wonderfully illegal about it to start with. You know, you kind of have to skirt the law a little bit to get stuff done.
Well, I have to say also, in relation to what Eddie was just talking about, that the Black Vampire, which is like the first movie in the Noir City International. What I really enjoyed about that, besides the movie being fantastic, besides the fact that the Film Noir Foundation, you know, funded the restoration of it, was that after the movie is over, as a part of this virtual film festival, this particular movie, Eddie is in a really great conversation with Fernando Pena, and they talk directly about how the movie was found, the restoration process, and kind of a deep cut discussion about the movie itself and its relation to Argentina. It was really great.
That's cool. I'm going to put up the poster again because the festival is happening online through the 29th. So there's still plenty of time and plenty of movies to view. So that's amazing.
And the thing that's interesting about this, and I had a lot of trepidation going into this, doing an online festival, because for the time I've been doing film festivals, which is over 20 years now, it's all about the communal experience of being in a movie theater. And I've always been a big proponent of restoring film, 35 millimeter film, as opposed to doing things digitally. But, you know, we're in a different world now.
Yeah.
And when Michael said it was the first film we showed, it was the first film to become available as part of the festival, but you can see it anytime you want. I mean, that's the other thing that is so different. When I do festivals, it's like the movie is at 7:00 on Friday night. That's the one time we're showing it, and we pack the theater for it, right? But now it's just like it's available starting on November 13th through November 29th, and whenever it's, you know,
great.
Whenever it's convenient for you to watch it, you just click the button and you watch it. I mean, so it's funny. And I always used to program double bills because I wanted it to feel like going to the movies in the old days. And anybody can make their own double bill if they want at home watching, but they can do it any way they want. You know, it gives total latitude to the viewer to choose how many films they want to watch in a day, what they want to watch after what, and you know, it's really fantastic, and the reaction's been great. Hey, look, John, I want to say one thing though.
Please.
I came on this program. Obviously, you know, there's the noir thing, but I never get to talk about comics.
Oh, don't worry, Eddie. Don't worry.
So it's like I don't want to miss out, man. I want to talk.
We're gonna talk about comics because I even talked to John about this, and I said I know Eddie wants to talk about comics, but I just wanted to make sure that we spoke about the magazine because the magazine just doesn't get enough. I feel like the magazine doesn't get enough press. It doesn't get enough talk about it. You know, I just don't think enough people know about it. So I wanted to make sure that
people who donate to the Film Noir Foundation, because that's
right. And I think that there's a lot of people who watch John's program who would definitely be interested in it.
Agreed.
Especially with the fact that Tom is featured in there. Tom's got a feature story in there. He did a 5 favorites in there. It would attract a lot of people to maybe pick it up, because I tell you, all you have to do is donate $20 to the Film Noir Foundation, and you get a subscription to it. You don't just get this issue; you're going to get
you get a subscription to it. Yeah.
Give the URL here, and I'll put it on the banner underneath us here.
It's Film Noir Foundation, all one word, .org, org, because we are a nonprofit.
That's great.
And if you're interested in the magazine, there's a, like under the at the top, there's something that says EMAG on it, so you can find out exactly how to donate and get a subscription.
Oh, this is really nice. Ed Walsh has first heard about Noir Alley on this very podcast. Now I watch every week. Thanks, John. Thank you, Ed. And look at that. I almost thought that might be a George Tuska Iron Man face, but it doesn't have the notch for his nose. See, I did that for you, Eddie. Absolutely, man.
Beautiful, man. Deep dive right off the bat. A deep dive into George Tuska. I love it.
Absolutely, man.
I love those Iron Man. Remember, there was a thing where Johnny Craig did Iron Man for like 3 issues. And I'm a huge Johnny Craig fan, so
Absolutely.
I loved those Johnny Craig issues. Of course, they got into. My recollection is they got into some kind of voodoo story because it's Johnny Craig, right? So
Yeah.
Iron Man's going to get into some Caribbean voodoo action.
I got to dig those up. I know another comic book guy that's a big fan of all of your stuff, all your guys' stuff, is Ed Brubaker, and Ed's a massive Johnny Craig fan.
Yeah, well, Ed was interviewed. Ed and Sean.
I interviewed Ed
were interviewed in that comic book issue that we did, where we did the top 10 noir.
And I've done I did a really fun live gig with Ed in San Francisco when he was promoting the hardcover Fade Out.
Oh, that's great. That's fantastic.
We had a really nice talk because that Ed's uncle is a Hollywood screenwriter, John Paxson, who wrote several noir films, Murder My Sweet and Cornered and Crossfire. Some major titles. Yeah,
absolutely.
So Ed has the lineage, right back to the original noir era. Pretty cool.
I have to point out a couple of my own relatives that were part of the film business. My grandmother's brothers were silent film projectionists here in Chicago at the turn of the century. And they were the ones that got the money together to sponsor her and bring her here. And then also I found out my aunt's husband, my uncle through marriage, was an advance man for MGM in the 40s. And his territory was Mexico. Wow. And I've never seen them, but apparently one of the family heirlooms are all these great publicity photos of him with all the great MGM stars of the 40s and stuff. So I think that's kind of neat. And also
that was wild. There was a big connection, a Hollywood Mexico connection in the 40s that was really, really strong. And MGM was a studio that had a presence in Mexico, definitely.
That's cool.
And a lot of Hollywood actors moved there. A lot of them moved there during the witch hunt. Dalton Trumbo moved to Mexico, and
yes,
and Ann Sheridan had a big hacienda in Mexico. It's very cool. And
wow.
And Norman Foster lived. Anyway, that's just interesting. The Mexican film industry is kind of extraordinary. It died out a little bit in the 50s, but it was spectacular, really.
That's cool. Last night on Turner, late night, and I DVR'd it because another subject I hope we'll touch on during this conversation is boxing. And I had never seen Tennessee Champ.
I passed out before it was on. And my wife, I woke up this morning and my wife said, I saw the weirdest movie last night on TCM.
It is absolutely weird. And it's
I've never even Tennessee Champ.
I've never even heard of
Take it,
I never
Eddie.
heard of it. I never heard of it.
Shelley Winters. It was Shelley Winters is the star of the month on TCM. And she made this movie, and I haven't seen it. So I'm gonna watch it on the Watch TCM app. But the way my wife described it to me, it was like, holy cow, this sounds nuts.
It's her first movie back after she had been married. So she made this big splash in things like Winchester 73 and got married, was away for like 2 years, comes back, and it's directed by the guy who directed Forbidden Planet. It's written, I should say it was rewritten because it was based on a short story. And the TCM article about it is fantastic. Tons of information. And I didn't retain all the names, but mostly I retained, this guy also wrote or this guy also directed. And I think the final pass on the script came from the guy who wrote the setup.
Art Cohn.
Yes. And it is a boxing movie, but it also has a very weird Christianity bent to it because Dewey Martin is the boxer that Keenan Wynn discovers. and it's kind of very Kid Galahad-y. Both more so the Elvis version. I guess supposedly, certainly the Edward G. Robinson one because the Elvis film came later. But kind of Bohunk with a big punch really doesn't know boxing yet, and the fight manager throws him into the 50s fight racket.
Well, Keenan
the
Wynn,
battling Bohunk.
Keenan Wynn is in the original Requiem for a Heavyweight.
Absolutely. Yep. The television one with his father. That's right. And the another great actor in the film, and I'm forgetting what his real name was, but it's Charles Bronson before
Buczynski.
Buczynski, and it's right after House of Wax.
Yeah.
So it's weird, and also it's that weird color treatment that MGM was playing with in the 50s. It's the same color treatment they used for Brigadoon. So it looks kind of funky.
You told me I may have to watch this movie.
It's purely from a historical standpoint. I mean, literally, I'm like, all right, I've seen it. I don't ever need to see it again because it's not a great movie. But it is interesting from all those historical notes and everything. And also Earl Holliman and the director later did Forbidden Planet and obviously brought Earl Holliman with him.
Yeah.
So it's weird, but it's a boxing movie, so they had me at hello,
Ergo, it's a boxing movie, so I must see it because it's like someday I'll do my list of the 100 boxing movies. They never stop making them. I think more people watch boxing movies than watch boxing at this point.
Sadly true. Sadly, as Mike and I know, commiserating every weekend. Yeah, and Steve too. Absolutely, man. So, geez. But Leanne, let's talk more about some of the features of the magazine before we get into heavy comic book talk. Because there are some great features that you guys have in this issue. Of course, starting with our own Tom King.
Oh God!
Look at me. That looks good. Absolutely, man.
Have you seen that before, Tom?
Yes, Michael sent it to me. I have not read the article. I can't read my own press. I gave it to my wife, and she's like, "It's great. Make sure your dad doesn't read it." So if my dad gets a subscription, if you get a Lawn King, just don't fulfill that one. So send it to me.
Hey, Tom, awesome. I gotta ask you, Tom, is this all a setup because we were doing this thing together? But I'm looking at your room there, and I'm seeing an awful lot of Eddie Muller stuff in the background.
I see the
Dark City Games and the Art of
program. He's got the program behind him.
Two different programs to the Noir Festival, I see.
When I suck up, I do it professionally. I don't go half-assed.
Okay.
I'm going on. No, I'm an Eddie Muller. I am an Eddie Muller super fan. I don't hide it from people. I very much enjoy your I read all your stuff. I'm sorry.
But all my Tom King comic books are in the other room. I don't have them here.
Yeah, that's what my mom says too. They're all in the other room. I get it.
Outstanding. Steve, what's your feature in the magazine? Maybe you have several.
I didn't write a feature. I wrote for a column that we do called Prime Cuts, my favorite neo-noir, and I wrote about The Vanishing, which is 1980.
I sent you the Danish cover for that.
I'm coming to it. Here it is. There we go.
There you go. Yeah, there's Johanna ter Steege. Eddie, am I pronouncing it correctly? Johanna ter Steege?
Pardon me?
Am I pronouncing her name correctly? Johanna ter Steege?
I guess so. I mean, you have just much... That's how I would say it.
Yeah.
Johanna ter Steege.
Yeah, it's probably
that is an amazing movie.
It is.
If people are unfamiliar with that film, and Steve does a beautiful essay on the film. Absolutely stunning film. I have a wild story that I can't tell. Sorry, because it spoils the end of the movie, and if you haven't. It has one of the most devastating endings of any movie ever made. And anyway, the story I'm not going to tell, but I'm going to recommend that you watch this movie. It's also one of the few movies that was ever remade in a different language by the same director. And he made this movie in Belgium, and George Duryea. And then he came to Hollywood and he remade the film with right, Jeff Bridges and Kiefer Sutherland are in the Hollywood remake. Same director, which hardly ever happens.
Huh. I didn't realize it was the same Vanishing as that film. That's awesome.
Yeah, I would say, if for people who are listening, if you've never seen the original, see it and stop there. Don't see the remake. If you've seen the remake and you've never seen the original, see the original right away, and you'll know exactly what we're talking about. And if you haven't seen either, just begin and end with the original. It is, as Eddie said, just a devastating movie with a fantastic ending. I think one of the darkest hours in neo-noir. Very well acted, very well directed, very well scripted.
So to bring it back to comic books too, doesn't it remind you of a full-length EC comic story?
Yeah.
Especially the ending.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, especially the ending does. The ending definitely reminds me of it.
That's great.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
We can.
Oh, and also listen. Let's get the how do people watch the festival? Is there a URL for the festival? Is it happening on Facebook? Where is it happening?
Yeah, if you go to the AFI Silver, we're doing it in conjunction with the AFI Silver Theater, which is in Silver Spring, Maryland. So if you go to AFI Silver, it's the only one in the country. If you go to their website, it'll pop right up, and you can watch individual films, or you can buy a pass for the whole thing. And the other thing that I love, I'm going to admit it, I love about doing this thing online, is that the pass never actually, it remains a good deal even after the festival has been online for 5 or 6 days, because it's all about how many you can watch in what amount of time. So, you know, all the films that we showed for the first 5 days are still available. So the pass is still a good investment. It's not like you missed those films, so why pay $125 for the whole thing? You can still see them all.
That's great, man. There we go. So the AFI Silver Theater website for the Noir City International Festival. Very cool.
And I want to say, as someone who's not the most tech savvy person, it is super easy. I just logged on, paid the money, and you click on it, and it just goes, and it interacts very easily. It's a very easy process, and you just press play once, and it plays an awesome intro, and it just continues to play right into the movie.
It's very seamless. I was even talking to my wife about it last night. How impressed I was that everything functions so well and so seamlessly, and if anybody, what I did last night so that I could watch a movie with my wife instead of just watching it on my computer was I just mirrored from my phone onto my television, because I have Apple TV, and I just mirrored onto. If you have a smart TV, anybody can do that.
Yeah,
mirrored it onto my large screen TV, and we sat and watched the movie, and it looked fantastic.
That's great, Eddie. I know you're like you said, you're a celluloid guy first and foremost, but in these times, and it's funny because another guy who I believe has contributed to the magazine, our buddy Hilliary Barta, sometimes he'll come on and talk old movies with me, and I'll say, you can see this old monogram movie on Amazon Prime. It'll be like, no, don't do that. Go to a theater. This is obviously pre-COVID, but now in these COVID times, thank God for a streamer like Amazon. It frustrates the hell out of me for all of you. Peacock is the universal streamer, and they're very proud of their library. And it's like, you've got a studio that has over 100 years of film, and seeing what they have in their film library, they got the obvious, but it's like, oh my God, where are some of these like deep dives? I mean, that's what I was hoping for streaming. And that's what I'm getting from Amazon Prime, is a lot of deep dive Poverty Row films and other things that I don't, you wouldn't normally see in certainly not in a video store unless it was a really hip video store. So yeah, what are your thoughts on that, Eddie, as far as the streamers showing the old stuff?
You have to adapt. That's the world we live in, right? And I'm learning to adapt. I'm very enthusiastic that I think both of these things will coexist. I mean, I am planning with the expectation that in 2021 our festivals are going to remain online. But I do believe that when we go back to theaters, we are especially well situated to have a strong public response to the festivals. And because that's what we do anyway. We have a very communal thing of like-minded people. So when we get back to the theaters, I think we'll probably do as well, if not better, than normal, theaters where people they'll get used to seeing stuff online or waiting for it to come online. But the stuff that we do, you kind of like this festival online, there are like 5 or 6 movies in this festival that are not available in any form. They're not streaming. You can't really get them on DVD. So we're value added, as the business people like to say. Hey, but John, I want to back up for a second and ask you, when you were running your title sequence there and it said scene missing and there was the cartoon illustration of the woman and the guy looming over, that's Hilliary Barta, isn't it?
That absolutely is Hilliary Barta. Yep.
Yeah, because Hilliary comes to the Noir City Festival in Chicago every year. I mean, I've known him for 10 or 12 years now.
Yeah.
And we of course bonded over comic books, right?
Absolutely, man.
Yeah.
No, we love great guy. We talk. He's kind of one of my guys. Is Mike and Tom when he's available. I mean, these are my go-to guys to talk old movies and stuff. And Will Pfeiffer too. Will Pfeiffer, a wonderful writer who had a great run on Catwoman in the last 20 years. God, I can't believe it's been 20 years. But now that I think about it, it was the early 2000s that Will was doing it.
Hilliary also does great limericks.
Yes.
And before I ever met Hilliary, I saw some of his limerick stuff online, and I contacted him and said, can you do limericks that I can read from the stage at the Noir City Festival in San Francisco? And it was great. And I mean, that guy is super talented.
That's terrific, man. Yeah, no, that's why I'm like, because he really enjoys doing the talk about old movies. I'm like, hey, is it in position? Can you do a drawing from when we do Scene Missing? And he's like, yeah, and boom. I love it. I think it's outstanding. And I really, so many of his, for people who are listening and don't know, follow Hilliary on Instagram, and he does what he calls Screwy Tuesday. And he always has like crazy stuff in that same style. And a lot of them are, the starting point is noir. And then, of course, Hillary's crazy mind kind of takes over and puts a nice little kind of EC or mad kind of slant to it and stuff. So Hilliary would have fit in really well with the EC people.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So
he's kind of a cross between his styles, kind of a cross between Wally Wood and Will Elder.
Agreed. With a dash of Jack Davis, perhaps.
Yeah.
Man. Those guys. I like Eddie. I don't know if you're how many modern are you still reading today's comics and all? And I'm not trying to guilt you to say something about Tom, but really even beyond Tom, are you reading a lot of modern stuff?
Not a lot, no.
Okay,
but I do. I try to be I don't have a hell of a lot of time, so I try to be very judicious. I'm like some people talk about binge watching television. I binge read comics. That's what I do. Like Tom's Batman thing, I read the whole thing. I didn't read him month to month. I waited until there was a whole mass of them, and then I just read them all. So because I find that reading a comic book, one issue only gets you like 15 minutes,
And that's if you're taking your time. Absolutely, man.
And here's the thing from, also reading comics, I am reading, I still read, a lot of new comics. Going a month without reading a story, especially if it's a continuation, it's like, what the fuck happened?
Sure.
What's going on? Do I have to reread that previous issue? So, actually what Eddie's talking about, just binging and reading like all of them at once, can be a better experience in a lot of ways. And it's why a lot of people now wait and do collections, and they buy a collection, or a paperback collection.
Well, the reason why I was wondering too is, in particular, Jimmy Palmiotti and Amanda Conner have had great runs on Harley Quinn. And I really noticed early on, and I asked Jimmy in particular, because I know Jimmy's the comic historian. I'm like, you're doing Annie Fanny with Harley Quinn, aren't you? And he's like, shh, and you Will Elder, and I'm like, it's great, and it is. It's a different character. So I've heard other film comedians, and right now I think it was Charlie Chase, the great silent comedian, say if you find a comedian you like who is physically different, and it makes sense from a silent film standpoint, he's like, you can kind of take mannerisms, and because you're so physically different, make them your own. And I really feel the same way with putting Harley Quinn in the Little Annie Fanny position. The great, for people who are listening that don't know what I'm talking about, Little Annie Fanny, wonderful satire.
More Will Elder.
Will Elder in
Harvey
Playboy.
Kurtzman and Will Elder, yeah.
Harvey Kurtzman and Will Elder, absolutely, man. Some of the great Playboy comics of its day. Very satirical, tremendous humor, and really you see the through line from those early EC comic book Mad magazines to and the regular print, the Slick as well, into the Little Annie Fanny era, and then really all the way through to Harley Quinn. So I think that's kind of neat that they did that.
And for people who don't know, John, you're underselling it. There's a ton of nudity as well.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, that was kind of the point of Little Annie Fanny.
A lot of looking at
Isn't that why we read Playboy in the first place?
Yeah,
I didn't read it for the interviews of the literature.
No? All right.
Eddie,
I'll be very disappointed, but all right, fair enough.
Eddie, you mentioned Will Elder, and that just brings me back to the old issues of Mad Magazine, the early Mad Magazine from the 50s. Some great stuff.
Oh, it was a hit magazine, man. Yeah. I mean, that's what I love about Mad and the history of Mad, especially when it was at its most vital in the 50s and stuff. You had Ernie Kovacs writing for Mad Magazine. And it's like, is there a higher compliment? I mean, my God. I mean, that's what, it was the Daily Show of its day in print form, where really, I think comedians really wanted to be part of the satire. And the entire history of Mad. And that's why, man, it just bummed me out how Mad ended with a whimper.
We did that show, John, together about the history of Mad when they decided to kind of cancel the new issues.
The most recent guys that were doing the film parodies in Mad, they just had a Kickstarter. It might even still be going on because they have a new collection of films that they're just doing on their own and kind of keeping the spirit of Mad going. And they had reached their goal, so I'm glad about that, and I hope they'll continue and make subsequent graphic novels and stuff. So
it is sort of weird that the history of comics and film, I feel like film, when it hit its censorship moment, when the Breen and the whole thing kicked in, that's when noir flourished, and it became this sort of way to get around the censors, and it was these stories of bad guys, but they got it in the end. But when the censors hit comic books, same Senate, noir just died in comics. It became Mad Magazine because comics never got the idea that the protagonist could be the bad guy. That never seeped into comics. We kind of abandoned that idea, for 20, 30 years.
Yeah, I see that. And I have thought that very thing, Tom, about how interesting it is, the similarities between, it doesn't track exactly in a timeline.
Yeah.
The similarity between the production code being reinforced in 1934 and then the Comics Code Authority coming in and stamping out all of this stuff in the name of we must stop juvenile delinquency and all that. Very, very similar. And of course, that the EC stuff and also all those, Crime Does Not Pay and all the Charles Biro stuff.
Yes.
Murder, Morphine, and Me, and all that. I love all that stuff. Anyway,
Reform School Girl.
Hey, I have to say, while we're speaking of Mad Magazine, how absolutely thrilled I was to get a fan letter from Dick DeBartolo, who wrote
that's great.
Wow.
those movie satires in Mad Magazine. He's still going strong. He lives in New York and he does an online, I guess he's like Mr. Gizmo or something now. But that was really great. He sent me a whole bunch of stuff. I don't want to jump up again, but I have
No problem.
I have a signed Alfred E. Newman over here from
Oh, that's great, man.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I'd love to, on Noir City, how you've had a few movies that had comic book adaptations. And we mentioned Dan Duryea earlier. Was it Underworld USA or was it The Underworld Story?
The Underworld Story.
Underworld Story.
These guys, I knew nothing about that. I don't know which Kronenberg it was that discovered that.
I included that in the article in the Dan Duryea story. I don't know if we did one specifically on Underworld Story or if it was a Dan Duryea story that we ran. But I found the comic book, the cover, and actually the interiors. I found all the
comic book tie-in. That was pretty awesome. Yeah.
That's the one that goes to the suburbs, and that's
up in New England. He's a disgraced New York reporter who brings a little big city savvy to a small town newspaper, the Lakeville Gazette.
Speaking of reporters and noir and EC, here's one of those pages. I got these from Al Feldstein and Marie Severin sent these to me.
Wow.
I was doing the design for the EC Archives library set for Russ Cochran of the Picto Fiction.
Oh, man.
These are the original 1950s paste-up boards. So this is a Reed Crandall splash page.
Yeah.
This was Picto Fiction, which had no word bubbles. So it was like graphic novels,
Yes.
mini graphic novels before graphic. And here's a Wally Wood.
Ah.
Yeah, wow. That's amazing.
Wow.
Fantastic. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Oh, my God. Have you
That's
ever read?
I was telling Tom that here's a Graham Ingalls also.
Oh, nice.
My favorite.
Oh.
My favorite degenerate EC artist.
That all of these things, when they sent these, and I have about 75 of these. I have about 75 pages. They've got the original tracing paper coverings, from the 50s that are kind of yellowing, and they all have like these notes from the artist to the printer on like what to screen back and what to hold back on. And what was really cool is I got from Al Feldstein, I got this note from him saying, Michael, please pay special attention to Wally Wood's signature on this splash page and stuff. It was great.
Oh, that's amazing. I wanted to talk about other Golden Age artists that, continued on beyond the 40s and 50s. And one guy that I always think of, always brought noir to all of his comics is Steve Ditko.
I knew that name was coming.
And Eddie, that origin of Doctor Strange is such a noir opening of this, washed up surgeon who's totally in drifter mode and everything before he goes and meets the Ancient One in the Himalayas and becomes Doctor Strange. I absolutely love how much, his stuff. Oh, and I see you're reaching for something. There we go. There you go.
Yeah, there it is.
Oh,
There it is. Wow.
yeah, absolutely, man.
And guess who is the main character of Tom's Rorschach?
Well,
Indeed.
legally speaking, I can't confirm or deny that.
You won't admit it. It's one of those things like, whenever I say it's like, shh, he says, shh.
Yeah. No, it's a great idea. And
besides the fact that, it's Peggy Cummins and Steve Ditko.
Hilarious.
That's why,
fantastic.
That's
film noir fans, the people, hopefully, what I'm hoping for is like with the article on Tom, was that a lot of people who are fans of the Film Noir Foundation and are big fans of Noir Alley, of course, and everything that Eddie does, that they will read this and see all the things that Tom's doing and the influence that film noir has on him, and buy the comic because it's great. The
Absolutely
came out today. Actually, second issue came out today.
Well, actually, Tom, I don't read a lot of contemporary comics, but I did see the layout from Michael's interview with you, and I want to say you really nailed Peggy Cummins in Gun Crazy. You nailed it.
That is 484. Well, Gun Crazy is a superhero comic book as a movie because they have superpowers. They have super gun can shoot anything powers. That So yeah, she's already a superhero. That she's got all Poirier had to do is put a mask on her and make her the best shot in the West, and that's easy.
It's a shame you never met her, because Eddie brought her to a Noir City festival at the Castro Theater in San Francisco, and Michael and I had the privilege and the honor of spending some time with her, and she was just such a wonderful lady.
Great.
Wow. How many other of those great
Peggy Cummins?
Wait, stand by.
Fabulous.
Give it up.
I bought off eBay. I'm sure it's just her PR guy, but I paid for it. God damn it!
Wait. Do it again. Put it up again.
Oh, there's my Peggy Cummins.
A little in front of you. There you go. Boom.
Signature there.
Oh wow.
That is Peggy's signature.
All right. There you go. I got that at least.
That's
awesome.
Tom, that is fantastic. Being an autograph collector, I really can appreciate that. That's great.
But Steve, you and I have her autograph. I mean, she signed stuff.
We do on the film noir, on the Noir City poster.
She signed the poster, and she signed my program that I did.
Yeah,
that's excellent. I was going to ask you.
I know she signed Eddie's poster because it's in the book with her signature on it.
that's
outstanding. Right. Yeah, how many of those femme fatales were still alive while you were doing the festivals and stuff? I mean, I know Marsha Hunt, right? You've had Marsha Hunt at your show.
Marsha just on October 17th. Marsha turned 102. I think 102, maybe 103. I've lost track. Quite a few, John. I if they were alive, I think I met them. If they were alive and in the United States, I never met Dorothy Malone. She stayed in Texas and didn't want to come out to do stuff. But honestly, I never thought that I would. Let me hide my IFB here. I never thought that.
He's a pro.
I never thought that I would meet Peggy, and I really kind of owe that to Robert Osborne at TCM, because Robert, years ago when he was in England, he actually went out of his way to find her and meet her. And they became kind of friends, and then he was able to talk her into coming to the TCM Classic Film Festival a year or two after that, which is where I met her. And then Robert, who was the greatest, most gracious man in the world, let me do the interview with her at the festival.
Wow!
And, because he knew how much I loved her and the film and noir in general and everything. And then that's where Peggy and I sort of where our relationship started. And, we were very, very good friends for a number of years. And, my wife and I stayed at her flat in London. And
wow.
She would make breakfast for us, and it was really fun. And it was very gratifying because she did not have many souvenirs of her career in the apartment, but when you walked in, the very first thing on the wall was the poster from that Noir City festival where she was the guest of honor. And that was a high point for her, I gotta say.
It really was. I remember her being very concerned about whether or not she would draw a crowd and and how the crowd would greet her. And I remember saying to her, you need to be prepared for the kind of ovation you're going to get. And when she came to the lobby of the Castro and people just flooded that lobby to see her and applauded her, I saw the tears in her eyes. It was a beautiful moment.
She was emotional. Steve, also, do you remember when we watched Curse of the Demon with her?
Yes.
At the Castro, and we came out of the theater and she got rushed by a ton of people, and she really got scared and worried, and she grabbed Steve's arm, she grabbed my arm, and she said, you guys can get me out of here. Well, she got very, very worried because people just were really rushing towards her, and I think it kind of overwhelmed her, and she wasn't ready for that.
I remember when she wanted to back off of seeing Curse of the Demon, because being a horror fan, it's one of my favorites, and I said to her, you're going to come to the Castro and see Curse of the Demon? And she said, no, my part was very small in it, which isn't true. I don't remember much about it. I said, okay, try and see if you can make it. And she did. Maybe the biggest thrill I ever had was sitting next to Peggy Cummins and watching her with her. And her part was not small.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I'm bringing up a couple other images because I want you guys to see them. Another great fan of noir that also does Scene Missing is my dear Hollywood storyboard artist buddy, Gabriel Hardman. And he did this commission for a fan and cast Orson Welles as a 1940s Batman.
That's pretty good.
I love that. And as promised,
Definitely sucking it in.
What's that?
That's Orson's definitely sucking in to get in that.
100%.
Yeah.
He's
Batman,
got the girdle on.
Batman eats and drinks his nemesis to death.
No question. And he's not taking commissions right now, but I'm like, based on that, because he never repeats a commission. So I'm like, could you do Robert Taylor as Iron Man? And I thought Robert, like 50s Robert Taylor, would be a perfect Tony Stark. And that's where and he goes, now that interests me. He goes, I'll definitely do that. So here's my other gift that I got. So there you go. There's Pudgy me as Mitchell.
That's classic.
That's great.
That's real good.
Yeah. So there you go. But let's, really, I don't want to, I hope we still have time to still talk more comics. I don't want to, oh, great. That's great to hear.
It's early my time. You guys are late. You're all on the East Coast or Central. I'm on the West Coast, so I got time.
I thought we were just talking about Housemaid the whole time. That's all I wanted to do.
Yeah, Housemaid was.
So you saw that, and that blew your mind. Is that right?
Oh,
Yeah, that's where you want to be in the theater because you just want to turn to the person next to you. Did you see that too, or did I hallucinate this?
Yeah.
That is a hallucinatory movie. There are many times. Tom is talking about a film in the Noir City International Festival from Korea that was made in the early '60s, and it really. You've seen Parasite, right, Tom?
Of course, absolutely.
Yeah, to me, Parasite felt like almost a remake of it, almost
in the sense that it's just the weirdness of the house, everything in taking place in the house,
but also Leave Her to Heaven.
But also the class.
There's a little Leave Her to Heaven in that movie too.
Oh, interesting.
And it's like, was that a deliberate thing that you paired it up? Leave Her to Heaven?
No. Are you talking about the staircase and stuff like that?
You two staircase.
Yeah.
No, this stuff happens. It's a wonderful thing when things happen accidentally. It's just serendipity. You don't really. I mean, we only showed Leave Her to Heaven because it's the 75th anniversary of the film.
Oh wow!
And we wanted to, just like with Detour, we're showing Detour because it's the 75th anniversary, right? They both came out in 1945.
Cool.
And we also wanted to get a taste of what it is like to try to deal with the big studios here in America get streaming rights to a film in this situation. So it's kind of tough because so many of these movies now belong to big entertainment conglomerates who are trying to figure out if they're going to do their own streaming of things. And so it can be difficult to get films out of them. So I don't really want to go into this in any detail, but for people who are into this and watching it closely, it is worth noting that there was a great deal of fear over what happened when Disney bought 20th Century Fox and announced that they were, for all intents and purposes, kind of closing the film vault, right? But Leave Her to Heaven is a 20th Century Fox film, and they gave us the right to stream it, between the 13th and the 29th of November. So that was a really positive sign as far as I was concerned. It wasn't easy with there are some films that aren't in this program that were in the program earlier this year live because the studios haven't figured out what their philosophy is with streaming. So there are certain things we did not get access to, but I was just really pleased that we got Leave Her to Heaven.
That's great, man. No, and this is me saying this. Gabe Hardman was telling me that he worried about Fox's, I want to get this right, like just their archive that was on the lot and literally had notes and photographs of art direction that literally went back to at least the 30s, if not earlier. And if you wanted to look at how a Fox movie was, the art direction and how sets were designed and what they used to dress it up and everything. The notes and the photos were there. And yeah, I think everyone's kind of worried about that kind of preservation of that material, because
that material is gone. That material is gone now. But wow. I don't think they destroyed it. I think it was all given to the University of Southern California.
Well, that's good. Well, thank God for that.
But it was right on the lot. I've been in that library. I mean, it was a fabulous resource, because that's where, if you worked at Fox and you could go there, say you were writing a screenplay or you were a production designer or something, and you wanted to know, you wanted reference for something you were doing, you could just go there. It was like the Fox library. And then there was also the Fox photo library, which I was on the verge of getting one of the great jobs of all time, which was to be a series editor for books all about the history of 20th Century Fox in motion pictures. And the first book in the series was going to be Fox Noir. And then there was going to be Fox at War, Fox Out West, Fox Sings, all that stuff.
Yeah.
And they were giving me complete access to the library and the photo vault, where I just went in one day and I said, I'd like to see pictures from Cry of the City. It was just, I picked it at random, and they came out with about 800 production photos.
Jesus.
From the movie being made in New York. It was like a treasure trove, but that never happened for various reasons. The person who was hiring me to do that was literally fired that day. The day that I was there at Fox taking that meeting, my guardian angel, whatever you want to call her, she got fired that very day. I was having dinner with my editor who worked for her. She was a publisher who worked for Fox. And we were eating dinner and the call came and said she just got fired.
Yeah.
And that hurt, man. Having dipped a toe into that photo archive. Oh my God. It was like heaven to me. Anyway.
No, I understand, man. And again, this is what did the photo library, did it survive? Did it get to USC?
Oh yeah,
okay,
no.
Good.
The photo library is there, but this is a thing, I mean, people don't know that this stuff actually exists, and it's like not for public consumption. And you think, man, do you have any idea what I could do with this stuff? Well, I mean, it's incredible what I could do with access to the Fox photo library.
Well, and this is why the foundation is so important, man. Seriously, because I know you're turning on a new generation to these great films. And I mean, luckily I'm from that 3 and 4 channel era, growing up with black and white television. And thank God, all the local TV stations would show some of these great movies. And it's just something else to watch on a Saturday or Sunday afternoon with my very knowledgeable grandparents and aunts and uncles, who were very happy to tell me stories about some of these actors and actresses. And another movie that I saw that also, again, ties back into comics, I was telling Mike and Steve, While the City Sleeps, the Fritz Lang film.
Sure.
And with Dana Andrews and Ida Lupino and the great Rhonda Fleming, another one of my favorites.
Just passed away. May she rest in peace. Yes. Hey, you want to know something? This is an interesting little tidbit about that movie, which I mentioned when I showed it not that long ago on Noir Alley. But I found this kind of fascinating because I knew the man who wrote the novel that movie is based on. He was a colleague of my father's. But, in the movie, the whole comics thing is that the kid who's the killer clearly reads EC Comics.
Yes.
I mean, and they make a big deal about that. In the book, the guy was actually obsessed with the Bible.
Wow.
His crimes were based on passages from the Bible, but they wouldn't do that in Hollywood because the production code wouldn't go that way. So they said, well, let's just make it comic books instead, which is deeply offensive to me. So
that's interesting.
Well, and that was right during that was all during the Kefauver, the whole Kefauver thing. The Kefauver investigations.
Right. And the Frederick Wortham seduction of the innocent.
Seduction of the
and all that, yeah.
And scapegoating the comic books and blaming them for the juvenile delinquency problem. You know, Eddie, that ties right into the editorial you wrote for the upcoming issue of Noir City, all about people with agendas and all about people trying to voice their own opinions about what should and should not be exposed in popular culture. It's a pressing issue. I know we wanted to talk about comics, but I really wanted to bring that up because
that editorial that Eddie wrote.
It's an excellent issue, and the features are terrific. Tom's interview and artwork is terrific, but I think the most provocative piece in this issue is your editorial about canceling, censoring, foisting people's agendas on other people and on art in general.
I appreciate your saying that, Steve. It comes up in a lot of the work that I do now. I'd be curious to know what Tom thinks about this, because I'm sure you face this too, as popular as your books are. But it's just interesting to me because I consider myself like a historian. Everything that I do is about trying to connect the dots in some intelligent way between where we've been, where we are, and where we're going. That's sort of what I do. That's why I like old movies. That's why I always say when I talk about noir, I say I don't think of it as this thing that happened then. See, and Tom is evidence of this because he is using the older films that he sees as grist for stuff that he's doing now. So Tom is extending the whole idea of noir. I mean, just a few things that he said about it on this broadcast have indicated that he completely gets it. You know, stories in which the protagonists are compromised, that the villain can be the lead character, all that kind of stuff. But what kills me is when I try to put this stuff in context and then I bring politics or something that was very germane to the creation of the work and people object. You know, it's that stay in your lane thing. You know, don't talk politics. You're a guy who knows movies and that's all you know. And it's like, well, I happen to know why this movie got made and what the people who made it were about. And the politics of it is important, right? Whether it's left-wing politics, right-wing politics, whatever, you know, it's not always the case, but when it comes up, it's really important to discuss it because if we don't do that, we're just going to keep making the same fucking mistakes over and over again.
Amen.
Amen. You're right. I mean, you mentioned the young man that came up to you and didn't know anything about the McCarthy era.
He knew nothing.
About the black system. And I thought we need to start educating our young people. I'm an old guy. I know about it, but we need to start educating young people about what was going on in this country in the 1950s. Because as you said, if you don't pay attention to history, you're doomed to repeat it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, I agree, guys. Absolutely. And I wondered, Eddie, on your comments about why the city sleeps, what do you think of the Frank Tashlin Martin and Lewis film, Artisan Models? I love that they included the Wortham era and you know the Senate hearings on juvenile delinquency and comics in the movie. And also, my God, those fake comic books are just amazing looking.
They're fantastic,
yeah.
I'm a big Frank Tashlin fan.
Me too,
I love
man.
Frank Tashlin, and you know, if you ever have a chance to see this movie called The Good Humor Man,
yes,
I love that movie because it was written by a guy who, you remember earlier in this program we were talking about a film called Too Late for Tears.
Yes.
The guy who wrote Too Late for Tears also wrote the story on which The Good Humor Man is based. And he wrote it as a straight crime story in the Saturday Evening Post. They gave the rewrite to Frank Tashlin. And all he did took the same plot and he turned the protagonist into a good humor man. Selling ice cream out of his truck to kids who were all obsessed with Captain Marvel. Right? And that movie is a lesson. I mean, you should teach it in like a screenwriting class or something to show how do you tweak something to turn it from a straight drama into a comedy, right? You hire Frank Tashlin for one. But it was fascinating because everything that happens in the movie is like classic noir, except the guy that it's happening to is wearing a good humor man suit. And at one point, the crooks stuff him in the back of his good humor truck and he gets frozen into a block of ice, which then the chase scene is him sliding through the streets in a block of ice with all these guys chasing him. And it's just like, this is insanity, but it's kind of genius in a way.
Didn't you include that in one of the during Noir City?
I've shown it.
I think it was like it might have been like 4 or 5 years ago. I think
it was comedy night. Comedy night in Noir City. Yeah, I showed Unfaithfully Yours.
Oh, sure.
Right, yeah. About a orchestra conductor fantasizing about murdering his wife.
Rex Harrison, yeah.
Big laughs.
Great movie.
Subject, right? But it is. It's hysterically funny. It's hysterically funny.
Absolutely. Unfortunately, remade by Dudley Moore, not quite as good as the original.
No, the remake wasn't quite as good.
No.
But it's interesting to note that.
I'll get to that. I'll get to. Finish your thought, and then we'll get to it.
Preston Sturges. This is. I don't know why I find this fascinating, but it just goes to show you: be careful when you talk about things in historical perspective. Preston Sturges wrote Unfaithfully Yours in the 1930s, and nobody would make it because it's like, who would find this funny that the guy is fantasizing about all the ways he's going to murder his wife? And so it wasn't until film noir happened, and then every other movie was about husbands and wives killing themselves, that Fox said, well, now we can actually make this movie and people will get it. It's now a parody of The Postman Always Rings Twice and all this stuff that was done contemporaneous with everything that was happening, right? I mean, that movie was made in 1947, which was like the heart of the original noir era. But Sturges actually wrote that thing like 15 years earlier. And it took that long for the culture to kind of catch up with him.
I love Sturges and I love his story and saw an amazing documentary about him within the last couple of years. I mean, trash, a Chicago guy also, which I think is pretty amazing. So I always got to give my local guys credit. So go ahead.
I was saying there's a great comic book moment in Pitfall where Dick Powell lectures his son for reading comics. It's one of my favorite. And he's like, comics will ruin your life and you'll be a terror. Meanwhile, he's having this affair and ruining his marriage and all sorts of murder. And I'm like, that's it. These are the hypocrites yelling at comic books. That's perfect.
That's outstanding.
Exactly. Yeah, that's great.
So
that was an early one. That was an early one, Tom, to pick on comic books. I mean, Pitfall was like 1948, probably made in late 47, released in early 48. Yeah. So yeah, that was right. Correct me if my timeline is wrong, but he was probably referring to those late 40s crime comics.
Yeah, like crime does not
right.
Pyro, yeah.
That's the comics he had on that thing.
Absolutely.
The thing about While the City Sleeps is interesting because the first story in EC's fiction series was a story called The Lipstick Killer, which is almost identical to While the City Sleeps. It depicts the same kind of killer with the same kind of fetishes, yet Gaines didn't even know about that film until 1972. So it's by pure coincidence that that story and that film kind of merge.
Absolutely. And in some cases, I think it may be a case of the writer going to the actual source material without even knowing that it's been adapted as a work of fiction, right? Because that story is a true story set in, that happened in Chicago. William Hirons was the guy's name, the kid who was convicted and served his entire life in prison and claimed he was innocent. You know, it's a really, really fascinating true story that obviously somebody could learn about and never know that While the City Sleeps is based on that story, because they changed so many aspects of it for the film. And the book was called The Bloody Spur, that the story was based on. It was not called While the City Sleeps. It was called The Bloody Spur, which had everything to do with the competition of the people in the newspaper to win the thing. That was the Bloody Spur was what creates sales of newspapers and all this, right? We need a bloody spur to get the people reading.
All right, I want to get this commented from Bill DeSimone. I like the point you made, Eddie, about White Heat on Noir Alley, about the change from socioeconomic roots of crime to mental health.
Yeah, very, very true. I mean, that I came across that when I was researching my original noir book, Dark City, The Lost World of Film Noir. And that was a conscious effort on the part of the studios when they were under fire. It kind of interwoven with the whole witch hunt thing. They said, we don't want to make crime movies anymore in which social factors are what inspire people to commit crimes. We want you to make movies in which psychopaths commit crimes because there's something wrong with them, as different from there are social pressures that force people to commit crime, right? And you know that Warner Brothers in the 30s, I mean, that was the studio that it was all social pressures that led to crime, right? I'm a poor kid, or as I love this quote. Only I will quote a movie where the quote never appears in the movie. But when Abraham Polanski made Force of Evil, it was going to start with John Garfield saying, there are 3 ways in this country that you can make a lot of money. You can be born rich, you can work hard all your life, or you can steal it. I was born poor and impatient. I thought, like, that is just the best opening line for a movie. And they took it out. They took it out because they thought it was a little too on the nose, but it goes to show you that, they were thinking about these things in some of the films, but yeah, Bill's observation about that is really interesting, because in the 30s, Jimmy Cagney became a crook because he was a poor kid from an impoverished neighborhood, and they never let him. And in his case, he was like shanty Irish, right?
Yep.
You can just change it to Jewish. You can change it to African American, whatever it is. It's like they're not letting you in to the big game, right? And that's why these guys became crooks, like, well, then I'll get it some other way, right? But by the late 40s, it was like that made American business look so bad that they said, we got to remake The Crooks. And then Cagney played Cody Jarrett in White Heat, and he's just a psychopath with a mother fixation, and it has nothing to do with societal forces or anything. He's just a nutcase, right? And Cagney hated it. He hated that character.
Wow.
And he hated that people loved that movie so much.
Crazy.
He regretted playing Cody Jarrett later in life. He said, that just, I didn't like that at all.
Interesting. Yeah.
Because he was such a mama's boy, he felt it was like unmasculine or something, or was it?
No, he didn't like the fact that he was a psycho villain.
That he was unhinged.
He was clearly unhinged, and there was nothing. He is not redeemed. Nothing. He's just a lowlife, a really, really charismatic lowlife who is really fun to watch on screen. And there was a really interesting. I touched on this in the intro on Noir Alley, or the outro, that. I think it was John Howard Lawson, who was one of the Hollywood 10, saw White Heat while he was in prison. It was like that week's movie in prison. And it blew his mind, because he said it was like watching this with 400 Cody Jarretts who all identified with him so strongly. Like, this is what you have to do. They're never going to let you into the game. You got to take it, all this stuff. And it was, he was shocked. Here's a guy who's in prison because of his political stance, and he's a writer and he's in there with these hardened criminals. Interesting. Anyway, enough of that. Enough of that political stuff.
No, but that was great, honestly. And I'm glad you mentioned John Garfield, because my father, in his youngest years, really looked like body and soul John Garfield. And it helped him out tremendously with his social life.
So did our father.
That's
My
awesome.
mother married him because he looked like John Garfield. That's what she said. She said she saw him in Coney Island. He was listening to a New York Yankees game on the radio in Coney Island on the beach. She saw him. She says, he looks like John Garfield. I'm going to marry him.
That's amazing.
That's what she said.
There's a great Will Eisner, Jack Kirby interview where they're sort of talking about growing up Jewish in New York and the differences between sort of Eisner growing up in the Bronx and Kirby growing up on the Lower East Side. And and Eisner says to Kirby, like, you had the John Garfield childhood. Like that was code to them. He's like, yeah, but I'm the John Garfield. And Kirby very much was like, that's me. Yeah, I'm John Garfield. Like, that's my life.
I always have to point out that interview is one of the special features on a great Will Eisner documentary that John Cook put on, the comic book artist's production of this Eisner thing. And you can find it on Amazon. And as Brian Bendis pointed out, Will Eisner invented the podcast, because really it's him with his little cassette tape recorder interviewing all of his cartoonist heroes, Eisner and Kniff and so many of the greats, in the 70s and in the early 80s while they were still around and vital. And yeah, I
have that in my.
There you go. Yeah, it's transcribed in Shop Talk. Absolutely, man. Well said. There you go. Absolutely. So,
I'm going to say that Will Eisner is one of the 5 most influential artists in my life.
Eddie did a great feature in the comic book issue about Eisner. I was the last person to interview Will Eisner before he died for Comic Marketplace. Russ Cochran gave me his phone number. I actually got to talk to him. It was like not an email interview. We talked over the phone, and it was like a month later. That's when I found out he had died.
My friend Alex Savick finished his last work, which was a crossover of The Spirit and Michael Chabon's character, The Escapist, and it was a very cute 5-page story. And Will just did very bare bones pencil layouts. And Alex was just such a genius artist that he was able to mock Eisner's style. And it was so great. And it really was this. I mean, I don't mind saying it now, 15 years after Eisner passed, because everyone's like, wow, Will still had it right till the end. And it's like, actually, that was Alex paying a great homage and then bringing it home, because Will was just too sick to really do it himself. But yeah, it's great loss. Now, you mentioned this issue, and I want to bring up the pages there from your top 10 noir comics. And I see them, and I'm going to have to take my glasses off to actually read this stuff now.
Yeah, so that was a combination of that Eddie and I came. That was
I threw the ones in that were like, well, we got to have this, and then this is a joint effort by me and Michael. Yeah, definitely.
Well, and I see on there certainly EC is represented right away, but I love the Steranko Chandler graphic novel. And I mean, God, that was really, I think as a kid, I saw that on the newsstands. Pretty salacious for being an underage kid, but
yeah, it's fantastic. It was great, and maybe Jim is watching this. Who knows, Jim? When are you coming out with that deluxe edition of that? Come on, man!
It's never gonna happen.
Yeah, I know. He roped me into doing an interview with him. And I forget where it appeared. Some Fantagraphics thing or something. To talk all about Dark Horse.
Dark Horse Presents.
Oh, sure, because that's where the expanded version was gonna land. Was gonna be at Dark Horse. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's funny. Has anybody here ever interviewed Jim?
Oh yeah.
Well,
you know that you don't really interview Jim. Jim does what he wants to do, and he gets you to say the things that set him up, right? I mean, that's exactly it. I mean, he's kind of masterful that way. But that,
Well,
yes,
how about Eddie? How about when he did the 5 favorites? So I was talking to John about this the other night. We invite people, Tom, this issue, to write their 5 favorites, and it's usually like a paragraph. It's a brief thing about. That's the feature story on Tom, the interview with Tom. But actually,
excuse me, I thought that was the 5 favorites.
I didn't want to include that because I didn't want to reveal what Tom's 5 favorites were.
What the 5 favorites are.
Well, we want people to buy the magazine, absolutely.
Like
but Jim just, you can't control him.
Holy shit!
Right? It's like this is the format. This is how it works, and he completely ignores it.
Totally.
And just does whatever he's going to do.
Didn't even pick 5.
But then again,
like
hey, look,
movies,
if Jim had followed Stan Lee's instructions originally back in the day, he wouldn't be Jim Steranko, right? I mean, he has to break all the rules.
Eddie, am I right? Bendis always refers to Jim as the Orson Welles of comics because there was so few comic books. But the legacy of those few comic books is indelible, and I mean it's such an important.
That's kind of a brilliant analogy, really. Because I mean I've lost. How many things did Jim do? Like 19, 20?
Yes, so few.
Well, I mean, as far as like he claims that he created 50 new techniques in comics.
I've
the 50 techniques which he's gone over many times. But yeah, I think he's done it. It was like 19 actual stories that he actually illustrated.
Something like that.
Amazing.
Yeah. And Eddie, you're right. I finally got to do a live interview with Jim at Terrificon in Connecticut. The year before COVID, and literally it was, Jim, nice to see you. And then I let him go for over an hour. And in fact, I think it didn't bleed into your panel, Tom. It was Howard's panel. Chaikin's panel was late.
I saw that panel just so I could in person see him tell the story where he claims that he got his first Marvel gig because he walked in off the street, handed in his art samples. Stan Lee walked out, says, "You can have any comic in my line. Just pick one." Off the street. That cannot possibly be true. No publisher in the world has ever been like, "You, man who just walked in the street, take over my industry."
Well, he had just gotten fired by Joe Simon. He was over there doing Spy Man with Joe Simon, and Joe Simon fired him. And that's when he
did tell you guys about the time he decked Bob Kane. He did mention that to you.
He's bitch slapped. He bitch slapped.
Even in absentia, Jim is taking over this interview.
Jim told me he decked Bob Kane, that Bob Kane came up to him and ruffled his hair. And Jim went absolutely berserk and just decked Bob Kane. I mean, cold cocked him. That was Jim's story to me.
They're probably true. It's all probably
I'm sure it's true. I have such a great Jim story. This is my Jim story that I really love. So I met him a few years ago in Reading, Pennsylvania, over the Labor Day weekend. I was visiting friends in Pittsburgh, and I drove across Pennsylvania just to meet Jim. And we had a lovely dinner. And then he said, "Hey," and I'm sure you all know that Jim, doesn't sleep. That doesn't figure in anything. So he says, "Hey, are you going to be up for a while? Because I'm going to go home and get some stuff and come back." And I was staying at the Abraham Lincoln Hotel in Reading, Pennsylvania. I believe I was the only guest in the hotel. It was The Shining in extremis. I mean, we came back from dinner. There's no one at the desk. There's no one anywhere in the hotel. And Jim, he drops me off and he says, "Just hang out in the lobby. I'll be back." And he was going up the hill to the compound, to get something. And, about 30 minutes later, Jim comes back and he's toting these 2 huge portfolios. And we sat in the lobby of this hotel for about 4 or 5 hours going over all of this original artwork that he had.
Oh, wow.
And it was mind-boggling. Oh, here's a thing I did for this movie project that never got off the ground. Here's a thing I did for Fellini that never happened,
Wow.
Here, you know, it was incredible. Here are all my production sketches for this movie that Coppola's never going to make. It was a trip. It was absolutely great.
I remember when he came to the Windy City Pulp Convention in Chicago as the guest of honor, and that was when Michael interviewed him. And he had his original paintings for the Ace paperback shadow covers that he had done. And they were absolutely incredible. I have never seen anything like it. I was standing there just drop-jawed in disbelief.
You were probably in that same group as he was talking about all those paintings, Steve, because I was at that particular Windy City as well. And they were amazing. Absolutely.
They were great. My story is from that's how he and I became friends. He had written the afterword to my Paul Galassi book. And he was so impressed because I had never met him before. He was like so impressed with the introduction I wrote to the book because I included him in the introduction. He was a big part.
You better. I think Jim Steranko was quite an influence on Paul Galassi.
Right, exactly. Well, so he was so impressed with that. And he loved it so much. He said, "Well, yeah, I'd like to. Let's get together. We'll have dinner together at the convention." And so Steve and I saw him, and I asked him, I said, "I want to interview. Is it okay if I interview you?" And we went back and forth, and he finally agreed to it. And we went up to the room. Steve had gotten an extra room. Steve, right? You got an extra room so that we could just sit and talk.
Right.
So we're sitting, we're doing the interview, and it's going on. I mean, it's going on and on. I mean, I'm talking to him, and we're going back and forth and talk about movies and comics. And Steve finally goes, "I can't. I got to go to bed." And finally, by the time it ends, I was like, "How long have we been talking?" And we're going down the hallway, and I said, "Jim, I'm ready to go to sleep." And I look, and I can see down the end of the hallway that it's light already. It's like 7:30 in the morning. We had been talking all night. And he puts his arm on it. He puts his arm around me, and he goes, "Well, you passed the test." And I said, "What test?" And he said, "You engaged me in interesting conversation for an entire night. Not many people have ever been able to do that. So now you're part of the club."
It's true.
Yeah, because I remember we went up there and it was about 3 a.m. So you must have talked to him for about 4 hours at least.
Outstanding, man. That's awesome. Let's go back to the list if we can. And I wanted to, and also again, everybody, to get the magazine, you just go to filmnoirfoundation.org. All you need to do is make a $20 contribution, and you get the magazine. It comes out quarterly, guys.
Correct.
Yeah.
Excellent. Absolutely. And so, all right. So we were on page 1, and so you've got EC, you got Chandler, and certainly Frank Miller's Daredevil comes into play, and then it's Jordy Bernay, right? With Torpedo.
Yeah, Jordy Bernay's Torpedo. Yeah.
So good. Absolutely, man.
Very sexy stuff.
Yeah, unbelievable. No, and I've loved his stuff, and then of course the controversial Alan Moore. Killing Joke. Yep. And then
very noir in that Joker tale of sort of everything going wrong, and can one get there is I see the noir angle on it. I could see.
Well, that was what I said. How somebody could have one bad day, everything could go wrong. So it's like I kind of feel like, can it be any more noir than that? Like someone has just the worst day and everything goes wrong and they're become unhinged.
Yeah, what's your breaking point?
It's in Elseworlds. Does he kill the Joker at the end, or are they just laughing at the end?
Oh, isn't that the whole controversy about that?
Yes. Yes.
Now is that he kills the Joker? I don't know. I don't believe.
I don't buy that. Yeah, I kind of like that. It's like almost a human moment between them.
Isn't that the noir moment where they're actually, getting together and they find a common ground?
Well, yeah, because literally, Batman's like, "Look, if this is going to end with one of us killing each other, please let me help you." And the Joker, in a very human moment, is like, "You can't. I'm too far gone."
Well, he tells him a joke, and they both get a good laugh out of the joke.
Yeah, and I kind of like that rather than okay, great, and then I'm going to snap your neck. So let that happen in Dark Knight Returns, of course.
When I was in 8th grade or something, we had to write an essay, and I stole that joke as like the metaphor for the essay. I got an A. Which, wow, that joke is so deep. It's with the flashlight shining. I was like, yeah, I don't know where I got it from.
Done that many times myself.
And I'll tell you, man, Road to Perdition. I've talked to Max Collins about this comic book. I've loved both the subsequent comics and even the novel, and of course the movie for that matter. I think that's amazing.
You're gonna make sure you tune in this weekend to Noir Alley because Max Collins is on with me.
Hey, that's great, man.
Oh, really? Oh, wow, that's awesome.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah, we're showing Kiss Me Deadly, and Max finished Mickey's novels. Mickey chose him, Spillane chose him to be the guy who finished his unfinished manuscripts, and so I have Max on to talk about Mickey and Kiss Me Deadly this Saturday and Sunday.
That'll be terrific.
I'm looking forward to that.
I've never seen it. It's not available to stream anywhere, or at least that I could find. Yeah, you can't get it on iTunes. You can't get it on Amazon. It's just
let me know what you think after you see it, Tom. It's a wild film. It is a wild film.
I've read the book. At least I've gone that far, but yeah.
Then if you have actually read the book, that's extraordinary because then you will see, like I was talking about how Frank Tashlin completely inverted or subverted Roy Huggins' story to make The Good Humor Man. Buzz Bezarides, who did the screenplay for Kiss Me Deadly, completely turns the novel inside out.
Yes.
And Mickey Spillane, when I talked to him about it, said, I hate that movie. I hate that movie. There's nothing in it that's mine except the title.
well, I was when I read it, because it has the famous ending that everyone knows about. So when I read the book, I was very confused because that was not the ending of the book. You're waiting for the world to end, and yeah. So.
Did you agree?
But the ending of that book, is I'm going to just say it is so stupid.
It's
that
book is very stupid.
I was about to ask you, do you agree that Bezarides improved on the book?
Yeah, absolutely. I think he did. I mean, Mickey Spillane is an acquired taste, right? I mean, he worked extremely well for his era. I don't know how
he was a comic book writer too.
He was a comic book writer. In fact, one of the funniest things about I knew Mickey for one day, right? I mean, we spent a day together, and when I was driving him back to the hotel, I said, "Man, it must be weird. You're such a regular guy. It must be odd to realize you're one of the best-selling authors of the 20th century." And he slugged me. He was sitting next to me in the car and he like belted me on the shoulder, like pretty hard. And he said, "Don't you ever call me that." And I'm like, "What?" And he goes, "Author. I'm not an author. I'm a writer. In fact, I'm a comic book writer." That's what he said.
That's awesome.
So, there you go.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Tom, you can pull that someday.
Damn. I'm like, this one's from Mickey.
I do a rewatch of The Outer Limits with Gabe Hardman, and we just watched the Ralph Meeker episode of from the first season of The Outer Limits.
Oh, with the giant coming out of the water?
Yes.
In the Amazon? Yeah.
Very funny. Yeah.
Ralph Meeker is so great. I am a huge Ralph Meeker fan.
Yeah.
So fascinating to watch. Absolutely, man. So that's great. Back to the list because I want to finish it out. You've got, of course, and when it's so fun, it's sad. Yesterday, it was it would have been his birthday. The great Darwin Cook and his wonderful Parker adaptations.
Yeah,
I'm such a fan. And Black Sad, of course, a great European comic that really had a great animated feel to it for people. I mean, it's a classic for older comic book readers, but younger ones should really seek it out.
It's weird. I mean, I would have thought I would hate that because it's like anthropomorphizing animals and like a cat detective. And it's like, are you serious? But the stories are so good. it's so well written and so beautifully illustrated that
Yeah.
if you're a comic book fan, I mean, you just have to love that stuff.
Absolutely. And you finish with the Fade Out, and then you've got two examples of great.
Criminal and the Fade Out. Now,
Yeah.
personally, I think Criminal is the greatest noir of the last 25 years.
I agree with you.
I just think it's in any form. I mean, it's just so beautifully done.
Eddie, have you been did you read, they brought it back and it was a monthly for like.
Yeah. I've read the start of it. I'm going to binge it. I'm going to preparing to binge.
And then, Ed has since, and he was just on Word Balloon talking about this, his new release with Sean is coming out in December. And they've kind of abandoned the monthly format, and they're just going pure graphic novel. Because also they did, I don't know if you read it, Eddie, this summer, Pulp. Pulp is fantastic. That was so good. Oh, man. They know he and Sean Phillips, they know what they're doing. And they just tell these tremendous stories.
They have a wavelength thing there that is pretty extraordinary. And I love Sean Phillips' art because it's not too illustrative. He draws exactly what you need to get the point and move the story forward. And then he leaves out everything that's going to hold your eye too long. If the art is too good, you just live in the panel for too long. I mean, his stories have such momentum, and his characterizations are so good. The way he draws
whose work is like that, Tom, is Jorge Fornet.
Yes,
that's what Jorge is like.
With your Rorschach book, absolutely, Tom.
The artist for Rorschach and did a lot of the Batman stories for Tom. His work is very much like that. He is a brilliant storyteller.
It's an interesting thing that I've come to learn over time about the art of comics, because when you're a kid, you have nothing but time and you live in the book, right? You look at it over and over and you study every panel. And then, Steranko's stuff was like, shit, I could just look at it all day. There's so much going on in there, right? But then you realize when you get into more long form storytelling, there's a pace there. You have to keep it moving, and a really, really great draftsman can slow down the story terribly if it's like too much detail, too much work.
Wally Wood is an example of that, because if you look at what Wally Wood did in the science fiction stories that he drew in the EC, they were each panel was incredibly detailed. I mean, unbelievably detailed. He consciously decided to change his style and abandon that for what he felt was storytelling, that he wasn't telling the story, that people were getting, that not only was he getting bogged down with having to draw all this stuff, but also that people reading it were getting bogged down into like that it didn't have this streamline, it didn't have this flow, the story didn't have a flow. So if you look at his stuff, afterward, and I think almost like what I showed this page that Wood did, and it's pretty damn simple.
Yes.
And this is EC stuff. So I think it was like right after the new trend.
Well, there's no spaceships in that splash page. Come on.
And I know what you're saying.
But even when you think about some of his stuff that he was doing for shock suspense, like the story of the woman who was the escapee from the guy who's in the cabin by himself.
Yeah. Come the dawn.
Right. And even that stuff had incredible detail in it, like the forest and everything. But he consciously made that decision to pare down the detail in his work, and it's not like it suffered, because his stuff is incredible.
Have you guys read? I bought the graphic novel collection of it. The stuff he did, I think it was in an Army magazine, and it was very racy.
Cannon.
I love. Oh my god.
Eddie, remember
boosting the morale of our fighting men.
I picked up that collection. That
is ridiculous.
That Cannon collection is incredible that they just put out. That hardcover.
It's very well produced, but as far as storytelling goes,
oh no.
Man, that is.
It's just.
If you like looking, if you buy that book for Hollywood to draw women. I'm sorry. That's
Yeah.
that's what that book is about.
It's just
You do not buy that for the story.
No, it's a very exploitive story, but it is an example of what a draftsman he was. And yeah, it's and I and again, Eddie, it's like you were saying before about cancel culture. Things have to be put in their context. And yeah, it was a very salacious book. I'm sure it would upset a lot of people on the left that I agree with mostly politically.
I don't imagine those people are going to be buying that anytime soon.
No,
but it's there. It's part of the Hollywood collection, And
yes.
yeah, I mean, Hollywood did some incredibly stupid stuff, but why not? Why not? He was working for a living,
Yeah,
that's what a lot of people tend to forget about guys from that era. It's like, where's my next job coming from? I mean, there was no Marvel universe on screen when these guys were working. And I just want to say something. And I had some questions I wanted to ask Tom about this.
please.
But I want to make sure that I get this in, because it's just something I feel very strongly about. Because having grown up as a comic book fan, and I still have my comic book collection. They're all archived and on pallets in the basement of the house I'm sitting
That's great.
in. I have all those Marvel. I have Daredevil #1, Avengers #1.
Wow.
And the full run. The whole Gene Colan run on Daredevil. I got that. So to watch this transition to where, like, basically the Marvel universe took over Hollywood is really weird to me, because I have never been as excited by a movie version as I am reading the comic book.
Interesting.
Because I just grew up that comic books to me are this incredibly amazing art form that it's just a writer and an artist and a colorist and a letterer. Okay. But that's the vision, that somebody sits down at a drawing board and actually draws it all out. I'm just in awe of that. And I am far more in awe of one person drawing a comic book than I am of hundreds of people creating the effects that we see on the screen. It has, and I'm an old fart, I get it. but I've never felt that rush that I would feel reading a comic book. I don't get it in a movie. That's just me, like seeing Captain America on screen was not like Jim's run on Captain America. That 3-issue thing that Steranko did on Captain America, where Bucky comes back and all that stuff.
I agree.
That was the most thrilling, 3-issue run on a comic book that I had ever experienced.
When I was a kid, I don't think I got. I went and saw Captain America in the theater with my son. He really enjoyed it. He had a great time, but it was nothing compared. Now you're a little older than me, and you got into you read the Steranko issues when they came out. For me, seeing like Steve Englehart's, that's how I became a Marvel freak, was reading the Steve Englehart, Sal Buscema, Captain America. And man, I love that. And that was a big rush for me. And monthly to go to this comic book store, not the comic book store, the newsstand, and to pick those up off the newsstand and know those were coming out. And I didn't know when it was going to come out. You have to keep going to the newsstand. There was no
no schedule that we knew of.
So I have to share this, because this is one of my, this is kind of a really fun for me, because I never get to talk about comic books and stuff or what influence on me, When I was a kid and I bought all these comic books off the rack, either in San Francisco at the drugstore, or during the summer I'd go to the Easy Freezy Market and go. It was just like in the movies where they'd have the big newsstand with all the comics on it and everything. And I remember buying, it was a Strange Tales, I believe, that Steranko did, and you got to the 2-page, the gatefold thing, and And then there was another one right after it. You know, he did them consecutively. And I remember, holy shit. And I ran back to the drugstore and like bought another copy because you could lay it out and get like a 4-part, like a super CinemaScope panel when you laid them the 2 issues side by side. And of course that just tickled me as a kid. And then I realized, you know, how did Jim sell that? He told Stan Lee that all these little sucker kids are going to run out and buy 2 copies of the issue so that they can see the thing laid out. That's like
genius.
That's
absolutely,
genius,
man. That's fantastic. That's outstanding. No, I agree. Absolutely. I also wanted to know, Eddie, I'm really, and forgive me for leaning on Eddie on this, but we're doing and Tom's a part of it. Next Friday, Black Friday, we're going to do a big Batman night, and we're going to have a lot of Batman creators on talking about their work on Batman. Tom, of course, getting ready to unveil he and Clayman's Batman Catwoman that starts in December, right, Tom?
Yeah, it's very noir too.
Yeah, really looking forward to it. And Eddie, I just wondered if you would, because I know Batman's one of your favorite characters, if I get any thoughts on Batman from you. And I'm going to single you out to talk about Batman for a second.
Well, I was, you know, Tom knows this. When I got that Noir Alley show, one of the first things that they set up was a crossover with DC where I appeared in a Batman comic book. You know, so that was like fulfilling a childhood fantasy to like, oh, I'm solving a crime with Batman. But hold on. Tom, vamp for me, Tom, because I'm going over here to get something.
Well, I was going to say, listening to you, that I think people who are fans of noir come to it not for its wonderful production values and for the thousands of people who work in it, but the fact that these were just dudes trying to make a living who almost accidentally made art. They were just trying to. A writer was writing a script to get a paycheck to pay his bills. He wasn't like, I'm going to go out there and you know, beat out Tolstoy. But through that chemistry of it being dirty business and a deadline business, they made things that were as good as Tolstoy. And I think that's what I love about comic books, is that it's not people are not in this, they're in this industry for love, but there is an immediacy and a dirtiness and Wally Wood was like, I just got to get pages out the door. I mean, it's not about getting perfection. It's about hitting a deadline. And from that, like, art emerges.
I couldn't, that's beautifully put. I couldn't agree more. It's weird. I have actually written 2 scripts for films that I have never been able to make about comic book artists that I would, and not feature scripts, just short films that I want to make myself. One of them is about Matt Baker. And,
sure.
Oh, wow, yeah.
And then a long time ago, I wrote a thing about a guy drawing superhero comics. It's exactly what you're talking about, Tom, because it was about a guy whose wife dies and he's really on the skids and he's an alcoholic and all that, but he's got a deadline and he has to finish this superhero story. And it becomes obvious in the thing that the character on the page that he's drawing is saving his wife, right? So it's like he's working through all of this stuff. And it was so fun. I wrote this whole thing out. I did a script and the whole bit. And I really tried to get a few guys that you all know to do the artwork so that we could actually do this, right? And Bill Sienkiewicz, I wrote him a letter and I said, you should do, can you do it? I had a lot of stones. I was nobody, but it was like, Frank Miller, when he was doing Daredevil, I met him at a comic shop in Berkeley and I gave him a copy of this script. And I said, I really want to make this film. Wow. You should do the artwork for it.
Wow.
Anyway, here's something I have to show. This is my.
Oh, wow.
How do I hold it?
Yeah, put it more in front of you. There you go.
That's my original Neil Adams Batman.
Oh, I want a Neil Adams Batman.
that he drew for me, at the San Diego Comic Convention in 1970, whatever. I don't even remember. Michael, you remember the year.
1973, because I found the picture of him actually doing those sketches for.
Yeah, at Poolside. Yeah.
There, but I found the photographs of him sketching outside the hotel under the umbrella.
That's right. That's exactly it. And he did that with a Flair pen, a little pencil sketch, and then he finished it with a Flair pen. And there you go. 1973.
Wow.
That was a long time ago.
Wow. Damn.
But I do remember this. I said, you do the definitive Batman. And Neil Adams said, and check me if I'm wrong, because he's probably said this subsequently. He said, no, Bernie Wrightson does the definitive Batman.
Oh, that's interesting, because in my conversations with him,
in my interview, he told me Dick Sprang did the definitive Batman.
And I've got a third answer. He said Jim Aparo really was, his Batman. So it's,
when you really think about it, though, Bernie Wrightson is kind of that's a good look,
Oh, God, yeah.
Tom, you have to weigh in on this one, Tom. You have to be the tiebreaker because you're the guy who actually writes Batman, for Christ's sake.
Who does the definitive Batman? Marshall Rogers.
Okay.
That is a beautifully lyric Batman story, The Laughing Fish, with him and Engelhart. And
and Tom, right? My chapter in my book, in my Batman book, the definitive Batman was all about the Marshall Rogers, Steve Englehart.
I know. I was shouting out to Michael because he and I were huge Marshall Rogers fans. There's a page up at Heritage this week from that detective run, but I'm too poor.
How much?
What I'm confused about is, did Bernie Wrightson ever actually draw Batman?
Yes, he did. Yes. Swamp Thing.
Okay. And also,
I think it's Swamp Thing number 5 or 7. I think he drew that story. In fact, I interviewed Len Wein for the Batman book, and we were talking about it, and he told me, and I showed it in the book, that one panel from that Swamp Thing story that Batman appears in, where he's kind of like up on a building and his cape is it's from him behind, and then his cape
between his legs,
and Len just said the greatest Batman image ever created was that in his mind. And there's a guy who wrote a lot of Batman stories.
Well, and he also did that great miniseries, The Cult.
Right.
And that was another great thing that Bernie did at Batman. Now Bernie's a genius. And again, gone too soon. Tremendous guy, sweetheart of a guy too. So no, I can appreciate that. What about Eddie, like the Dick Sprang era of Batman, that 50s great stuff with all the giant typewriters and props and things that were in the,
Well, I remember all those from the paperback reissues.
Sure.
They reissued all that stuff in paperbacks, it's and that's where I saw all of that stuff. But this conversation, all the people we're talking about in this conversation, that's like my sweet spot for my, when I really fell in love with comics. Was it started with Marvel. I was a Marvel guy.
Me too.
But then there was that whole renaissance of all those incredible 70s artists like Bernie Wrightson and Mike Kaluta and just all these guys who just were extraordinary. Barry Smith and of course Jack Kirby.
There we go.
Was always the studio. Yeah, Jeff Jones was in there and all those guys. And it seemed at that point like anything was possible in comics. Like these guys were just breaking every rule and just,
and all of them were leaving comics too. They made their name. They all left to become paperback covers, to do
fantasy artists.
They wanted to make some money.
Right. See? Right. Well, and Eddie, your point earlier about these guys just grinding out a check. I mean, and it only was rediscovered, I think, a few years ago. But the great Superman artist Joe Shuster doing all those S&M comics that he did. And you look at the faces, and there's Superman and Lois and Lex.
Yeah.
whips and chains and
I mean, it's
and
really,
gags.
I don't begrudge, it reminds me, I don't begrudge anybody getting paid real money now to do this stuff,
Sure.
But it reminds me of when a few years ago, I interviewed Lauren Bacall.
Wow.
I actually flew to New York to do a media day for this Paul Schrader picture called The Walker that I think 5 people saw, right? Great performance by Woody Harrelson in this movie and a bunch of great women in the film, including Lauren Bacall. So I was the last interview of the day. She gave me a whole hour to talk with her. And she got so riled up when she talked about money, because she said, I said, it's incredible that you're still working. You still make movies. Why? Why? I mean, is it for love? And she goes, I need the money. And I didn't really believe her because she was quite well off at that point. But she used it as a way to say, look at what people get paid today to make these movies. Do you think Bogey got paid anything like this? He was on a weekly retainer for the studio. She said, do you know that Tom Cruise makes more for one movie, twice as much than Cary Grant made in his entire career? Yeah. Right? Cary Grant didn't make as much in a lifetime as Tom Cruise makes making one movie. Yep. Now, I understand that there's inflation and all that stuff, but it is different. And that's why, what Tom was saying about these guys just hitting a deadline. My dad was a newspaper man. So, my dad would never write a novel. But, man, could he make deadline? Get the fuck out of here. I mean, it's like, you got 5 minutes because this is the copy, and the copy boy's standing next to the desk, and it's like, finish the thing because we're going to press. Yep. That was how he made his living, and he could perform under pressure. And I have endless admiration for those people. Endless admiration. It's a job. Get the job done, and if somehow you sneak a little art into it, good on you.
That concept just extends across popular culture. The pulpsters, same thing. The writers for the pulps and the artists for the pulps. People like Margaret Brundage.
Nice.
Yeah. They they had to make a living, and they had a deadline. And
I'm amazed, and I love reading those stories. Guys like Steve Fisher, who would would write a story, every few days, and then just like a kid in school, like the deadline would be 9 o'clock on Monday morning, and he'd start writing at like 11 p.m. on Sunday night.
Yeah.
And somehow he would turn in like a 5,000 word story at 9 o'clock in the morning. It's like, wow, my God, these guys are amazing. And women, these men and women who do this are astounding to me.
Agreed. I come from sports radio, and I know what you mean, Eddie. I really admired the print guys who really had to grind it out, whereas we could extemporaneously give a report as soon as the game was over. And these guys had to write their piece and, like you said, get it to the copy guys before they went to press. And I hope you'll come back, because I would love to talk to you about your father. And I'm a massive boxing guy. I wrote for Ring and Boxing Illustrated. Bert Sugar was one of my dear friends.
Oh, okay, cool.
So yeah, and I really am interested in hearing about your father's era of he was in San Francisco, right, doing the boxing beat there.
Yeah. Oh yeah,
that's amazing.
In fact, I put up the
that was great. That was great.
The video up of your dad at the Eddie DeMarco, Jimmy Carter. He's in the background there,
Well, that's what was so amusing about that. You say you put up video of my dad. There is a title fight happening in the foreground of the video, right?
Very nice knockout too, and a really nice knockout by Jimmy Carter too.
Oh, it was great. I actually have that page from the paper the next day is actually framed here in my office, because it's one of the few times my dad's actually in the photograph, because it was right from the same angle that video was taken. And just as DeMarco's going down, you see my dad like rising up and going, it's this beautiful shot of him like at work. My dad at work.
You did a nice tribute on your dad in Ringside Seat.
Yeah, I was
that was a very poignant article.
If anybody's interested, Eddie wrote a great piece, and the photograph that he's talking about is in that piece. I included it in that piece, so you can get that. In fact, I saw, Eddie, you've got the first print edition of Ringside Seat right behind you on your desk.
I do, right here. Yeah.
Boom.
There you go.
Outstanding.
It's good stuff.
Terrific.
Read that one cover to cover.
We'll have a
I
future.
just got the new one. I downloaded it today. I started reading it.
The new issue.
I love Eric's column is fantastic.
He's hilarious. Eric is
really funny.
What we need to do is have Eddie on, if he would agree, because Bill and Steve and I are going to be on John's show talking boxing and talking about Ringside Seat. If you would be interested in coming on, Eddie, it would be great.
Sure.
Oh, that'd be great, Eddie. We don't want to obligate you on camera, but it would be great to talk because, yeah, man, I covered the sport for 16 years, and I still watch it, and it's as all of us have a love-hate thing with boxing. So frustration
that goes without saying.
Yes.
I mean, yeah. Yes. People say, why do you like boxing? I say, because it's so cruel to me.
Yes. it's truly like a drug addiction.
You have to have a streak of masochism in you to be a boxing fan.
But then a great fight happens, and it's like, my God, it's like no other sporting event imaginable.
Pure drama. Absolutely.
I don't think it's masochism, and I don't think it's sadism. I think there's a beauty to it.
Well, there is, but
they managed to screw it up because it's the perfect metaphor for life, right? It's a battle. It's a battle, and you're going to be surrounded by people who are trying to exploit you and screw you at every turn. And you better take the high points when they come, because they're not going to last very long. You better start planning for your exits. You better have an exit strategy in place. Right?
It's cruel. It's cruel to watch. Besides the fact, the cruelty of seeing some of your fighters, the fighters that you love, get the shit kicked out of them, and they're staying in the ring too long. I'm not even talking about that. But as a fan, because there are fights that need to be made that aren't made because of politics. It's incredibly frustrating because the idea is to see these fights, that there are great fights that will be made, and they're not happening. They're not happening because guys with money, rich guys,
they're not getting the people who don't fight aren't getting enough money out of it.
That's right.
And that's I think that's where it's masochistic to be a fan, because you'd almost feel like, why am I even bothering?
Why do you have to avoid it?
But as
you're using up all of your best material for the boxing show.
All right.
All right, fair enough, indeed. We can, and then truly, guys, we're at over 2 hours, so we could keep going. I could certainly keep going. Tom knows.
I can't. I need a drink. I totally need a drink.
No, all right, fair enough. Then we'll wrap up. But I want to thank you all for really great stuff. And then before we go, real fast, let's just show some of the great stories that are in the latest issue of Noir City. So like Visconti Noir, that's beautiful, man. And I can't wait to read that.
While you're showing, hey John, let me say this. While you're showing these great pages, I just want to say one thing. Don't show me. Keep showing the pages.
Fair enough.
It was Michael who turned this whole thing around. I knew that when we started the Film Noir Foundation that I needed to put out a newsletter or something to give people who donated money, to make them feel like they were part of something. And for a number of years, we went on like that. And in the early days, I did it all myself. I pretty much wrote everything and laid it all out. And then I got other writers to contribute. But it was not until Michael reached out to me and said, I have to be your art director. And I didn't know him. This is how we met.
Wow.
And I said, well, here's a story. I gave him a story that I had written, and I said, lay this out. And then I got it back 30 minutes later, completely laid out, and it just looked fantastic. So all this gorgeousness that you're looking at is all Michael. You know, I have to give a shout out, in addition to Michael and Steve, I have to give a shout out to Vince Keenan, who is now the editor-in-chief of the magazine, who is just doing a spectacular job. All these guys are now, I kind of put things in place, but all these guys are making me look really good now.
That's amazing, man. Well, again, and I agree with you in terms of Michael's talent as an art director. I've loved what he's done as well at Ringside Seat, and his amazing covers that he does for the Tomorrows guys, for things like Back Issue and the like. No, it's you got a great eye, Michael, and it's good stuff. And Steve, I look forward to getting to know more of your essays. Reading Noir City.
Steve's stuff is fantastic. He's written some of the best things we've had in the magazine in the last few years. It's really, really great. And Steve thinks outside the box, which I really appreciate. You know, he did a great piece about Black Caesar and whether that's a noir or not. And it's great. Thanks, Steve, because somebody just sent me a question about blaxploitation movies, and now I can just cite your article, you know.
That's great.
Not that I like the term blaxploitation, but
you know.
Yeah.
Well, you know, we had Fred Williamson on one of our online conventions back in August, and no, I mean that, and also Hammer, his wonderful boxing movie.
Yeah.
I'm a massive fan of all of Fred's work, and great filmmaker, or interesting filmmaker. Maybe great, you know, but I mean, even the stuff he was doing in the 90s, his procedural movies.
Before we close, I'll call Michael out on something, because he and I were at the Silver Theater convention many years ago, and two of the guests of honor were Fred Williamson, and sitting right next to him was his leading lady in Black Caesar, Gloria Hendry.
Wow.
And nobody was at their tables. So Michael and I go up, start talking to Fred Williamson. I want to talk to him about Black Caesar. Michael ends up talking to him for an hour about football. So
sure, of course, yeah, the hammer, man.
It was great.
The hammer with the Kansas City.
It was great because I was able to make time with Gloria Hendry.
Very good.
That's outstanding, man. No, and yeah, again, another great topic that we could easily go on for another 2 hours about. But seriously, guys, love what you're doing with film noir, and so happy to promote it. And again, everybody, go to filmnoirfoundation.org. Just $20 will get you this amazing quarterly magazine for life. So that'll be great. And then also, again, we'll remind people about the International Festival that is still going on. And I'm going to get the banner so people will know where to go for that. There it is, the AFI Silver Theater website for the Noir City International Film Festival that goes on through the 29th, correct?
Correct.
Okay, very good. Excellent.
And Tom, I just want to say I really had a bunch of other questions I wanted to ask you about making comics, but we'll save it. Maybe we'll just have a phone call or something. But
hey, man, you're welcome to again talk more comics on the show, Eddie, and talk boxing whenever your schedule allows. Okay. It would be great.
Very good.
Someday the plague will end, and I'll buy you some whiskey, my friend.
There you go. Absolutely,
man. That is totally a deal.
I certainly wanted to help out the foundation and give it its due, and certainly the festival as well. Because right now, I know, man, not having the live events obviously hurts the foundation. So I think it's really important to let people know how they can support this online, as well as just when festivals do come back. And we all look forward to that day. And
it's coming. It's coming.
Absolutely, man. And Eddie, as always, man, I'm really glad you're part of the TCN family of hosts. We were all worried. I mean, we knew Ben could do a great job, but truly, you and the others that have stepped up in Robert Osborne's absence have really keep the flame going. And it's very clear all of your loves of movies, all of you guys and women, and it's really exciting to get your perspectives on these films. And I love the interstitials that you do about ties and hats and the like. I mean, it's outstanding. It's very entertaining. So thank you for being a big part of my television diet every week.
That's great. I appreciate that very much. Although I do note that it takes 5 of us to fill Robert's shoes.
No question. Hey, man. Totally true. Absolutely. Everybody, thanks a lot for watching tonight. Again, thank you all, Michael, Steve, Tom, Eddie. I remind everyone that Tom is going to be back in just over a week from Friday, Black Friday, as we do the big Black Friday event with a lot of other great Batman creators. And it's going to be a very full evening of great conversation about Batman, and certainly in celebration of Batman Catwoman, he and Clay Mann's excellent book. And continued success, Tom, on Strange Adventures, and also the Rorschach series as well.
Pick up Rorschach. It's out today. It's great.
Absolutely, man. All right, everybody. Thank you very much for watching. We had a great audience watching as well. And thank you very much. We're silly, apparently. Well, that's very nice, Generation.
Thanks a lot, John. Thank you for having me.
Thanks a lot, guys. Absolutely. And as always, everybody,